Hello Flosstube and welcome to my channel, Ros Clark Craft. That's my name here on YouTube. You'll also find me as Ros Clark Craft on Instagram and also on Etsy if you'd like to have a look at the patterns available in my shop there. So welcome back if you're a returning visitor, welcome, particularly if you're a new subscriber. I seem to have had a little flurry of those in the last week or two, which is lovely. It's so nice to have you here and I hope you enjoy watching some of what I've been stitching, some of the things that I have been thinking about this week. You may know it is due to be, so today I'm filming, it is the 29th of April, Saturday. Next Saturday, the 6th of May, is due to be the coronation of King Charles III. So I thought I would just show you a little bit about coronation needlework. It's not cross stitch, but it is coronation needlework and it's very special and amazing. So we'll do that at the end. I'm going to start with some finished objects. I haven't got any fully finished objects. I thought I might, but I haven't got around to it. So I've got two things that I've finished in the last couple of weeks, which I'm very pleased with. So the first is this. This is Tulips and Stars by Yasmins Made with Love. There we go. I use Sulky Blendables on 18 count Ada. This is Ada from Zweigart. I think it's just the colourway, might be called Sage. And I used a range of Sulky Blendables in tulip-like colours, pinks and reds and oranges and yellows. I'm really chuffed with my colours. I think I really love the way this turned out. There are some intended and some unintended personalizations, shall we say. I hoped to finish it last Sunday, 23rd of April, when Yas was running the London Marathon. So this was one of her charity patterns that she was giving away in exchange for donations to her marathon fundraiser. And so a number of us were stitching these to finish sort of as she was running. I massively underestimated how long that bottom alphabet section would take. And I also still had on Sunday left to do the little yellow doodads in the bottom 3 stars. So yeah, it all took a bit longer than planned. I did finish it on Sunday, but Yaz had finished running long before then. I made some changes. Like I say, some deliberate, some not deliberate. I'm completely fine with it. I'm very happy with how this has turned out. I'm going to make this into a project bag. Before I do that, I do need to clear and clean my sewing hut a little bit so that I can actually get to the sewing machine. There's a lot of sorting out that needs to happen there. I might try and do that. We've got a long weekend this weekend and also next weekend in the UK. So hopefully by the end of all of that, it will be sorted out and then I can have sewn this up. Hopefully ready for the next time. So the charity patterns are no longer available as charity patterns, but I believe they are or will be, I haven't checked yet, in Yaz's Etsy shop, Yasmins Made with Love. So I'll put a link to that below and you should be able to purchase that. If it's not already up, it will be up soon. And it's really lovely. It's a really nice, relaxing stitch. It is more repetitive than I really like to stitch, but on the other hand, that makes it very easy. So this shape in this sort of tulip is the same shape that you get 4 times in each of the stars. So by the end, you've stitched that shape. I think I worked out maybe 36 times, something like that. So you do get to know it pretty well. And obviously the stars, you get 6 of those. The letters, you have to pay a bit more attention. But it's not difficult stitching. Worked perfectly on the Ada. I loved using the blendables and I think it'll be really nice. Other people have done it in colours a bit more like the ones in the design and the pattern, which are sort of blues and greens and aquas, and that looks really pretty as well. But it's definitely the kind of design that you could choose any colourway at all, frankly, and it would be lovely. I think I used more different colours perhaps, but you know, you could do it. I mean, it would be beautiful in monochrome, but I mean, why wouldn't you use lots of colours? I say. So I'm pleased to have finished that. I was doing it in parts, like I say, for the marathon stitch along, and it was really fun to have people join in that, and it was really fun to see people finishing it on Sunday. Stitch alongs in that sort of way, not absolutely my favourite thing. Anyway, so this is my other finished object. This was from this was the last remaining caterpillar cross stitch club box that I had. I stopped my subscription after this one, and it's been sitting around for a year waiting for me to stitch it, and here it is. So this is called Spring Wings. It's by Little Dove Designs. I believe you can now buy the chart, I guess from Caterpillar Cross Stitch, but it might be from Little Dove Designs. I would need to check. You can't get the club box anymore, but you can get the chart. Someone on my Instagram was stitching it the other day. So mine came with this pink Ada, pale pink Ada. I mean, yeah, good luck if you can work out that that's pale pink on my camera, but it is. And I stitched it with almost all of these were, well, yeah, almost all of these were in the club box, but I added this sort of mid pink as well and changed some of the colours around, particularly on the butterflies. And I liked how that looked. I also decided that I was going to add a little bit of sparkle on the flowers and the butterflies. You can't see all of that, but there are beads in all of these little flowers, and these are beaded here. No, they're not. Where are the beads? These are beaded in the center, and then obviously on the butterfly wings as well. I really liked how that turned out. During the course of doing it, I had spilt something. I'm still not absolutely sure what, but anyway, it was a little sort of pale pink splodge. And as I was finishing it, I was like, you know, the fabric's fine, but it's a bit boring, and it's got that splodge in it. I know what I'll do. I'll just use some paint splatters over it. It's probably not completely colour flashed. It's fine. This is not an heirloom piece. So I just used some pale pink and pale purple paint and a brush and just sort of splattered it over the top. In an ideal world, you would do the splattering before you do the stitching, so you don't get it on your stitches, but you can't. I'm just looking to see if you can see it on the stitching at all, and I'm not sure you can because it's pale enough that it just sort of blends in. So yeah, so this is just going to be a hoop finish. It's sort of the end of spring, but I think this would do perfectly well for summer as well. It's butterflies and flowers, and you know, I like the colours. So I think that will go on my hoop gallery wall quite soon. So I was pleased to have finished both of those. That was also on 14 count Ada. Mine came supplied with the club box, but obviously if you were just buying the pattern, stitch it on anything you like. So I'm pleased to have done that. That was part of my Stitch Your Stash and also Get Your Kit On. So Get Your Kit On Sal is being hosted by Somi Sarah. I will link her Instagram channel below. It's for any kind of kit. So it could be an enormous, great full coverage kit, or a little mini kit that comes on a magazine, or anything in between. I really wanted to join in because I just think it's such a great name for a stitch along, Get Your Kit On. And so I got out the kits that I had and decided this was the one that I was going to do. I might do others. I think it's the kind of hashtag and the kind of stitch along that you could use anytime. So that was Get Your Kit On, and as I say, it was also my April Stitch Your Stash project. So far I have done 4 Stitch Your Stash projects, and my Stitch Your Stash plan is simply every month to stitch something that I already own, because it's always tempting to go for the new exciting pattern, isn't it? It's always tempting to think, oh, that's new and shiny, I should do that. And actually, most of us, all of us, me certainly, already own quite a lot of patterns that we bought because we wanted to stitch them. So rather than have them sit around getting forgotten in a drawer or in a folder on my iPad, I'm trying to make an effort once a month this year to stitch something that I already own. And I'm doing quite well so far. So those are my 2 finished stitches. What else have I got? I made a little list. Okay, work in progress. Yeah. So here's where we're at. On my birthday, which was April the 16th, I hosted an Instagram live for an hour. It was really lovely to have people join me and come and say hello and ask questions and give me helpful advice, because I've never done a full coverage before like this, and I've never done a Gecko Rouge before. So I did the unboxing in my last video. So if you want to know what that looks like when you get a Gecko Rouge kit, go and check that video out. Here is where we are at, and then I will explain how I've got there. So I did decide, last video I was umming and ahhing about whether to try and use a coloured background fabric. And as you see, I am that way round. There we go. So this is Razzmatazz, great name, from Roxy Floss Co. It is, I can't remember if it's 18 or 20 count Ada. I think it must be 18 count Ada. And I measured it carefully, and it does fit on here. So there's plenty of room across the width of the piece. It's a little bit tight across the length of the piece, but it is, as you can see, it came serged. So I'm not worrying about, you know, losing any to fraying, and it is perfectly square as well. So I'm not worrying about that. I'm just going to have to think about when I finish it, how I do that. And I think probably I will need to just sew on extra finishing strips top and bottom so that I've got enough to play with. But that's fine. So I decided that's what I was going to do. And during the live, I did my first 3 stitches. Way! I mean, 3. Yeah, at one point I was like, I'm not sure I'm going to get any done, but I did get 3 done. I've started in the bottom left-hand corner. I don't know if that was a good decision or not, but it's what I've done. So I've got to stick with it. Well, except that pretty much every stitch I've done so far in this piece has been taken out, including those first 3 stitches. Let me explain. So this is obviously not gridded fabric. I started stitching it without gridding it. I'm like, I can count, it'll be fine. It's Ada, how hard can it be? Anyway, harder than you'd think, turns out. So I did, you know, my first dozen or so stitches this morning and realised half of them were wrong. And I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to grid this. It'll be fine. It'll be better. So I haven't gridded all of it, obviously, but I have started gridding it. And this is the little section that I'm working on, sort of here. And so I've, you know, gridded at least as far as anywhere I'm likely to be stitching at this point. So I had to take out all the ones that I put in the wrong place there, put in the gridding. Then I realised I put in the gridding in the wrong place, because I had started counting 10 across and up from the bottom left-hand corner. But the chart doesn't start its grid lines in the bottom left-hand corner. Yeah. So my grid lines were not in the same place as the chart grid lines. So I took those out and put those in again. And again, put them in the wrong place, because I'd looked carefully at the chart and I'm like, okay, there are 3 stitches past the grid line. So that's fine. And just assumed stupidly that there were 3 stitches horizontally and vertically past the grid line. But no, 3 stitches one way, 1 stitch the other way. So then I worked quite a lot of it. I'm going to say quite a lot. I'd done, you know, by this point, 90 stitches were in. Obviously, not including the amount that I'd already taken out. And some of them were in the right place relative to my grid lines. And some of them were in the right place relative to the initial 3 stitches on the bottom row that I'd started. Yeah. How easy is it to work out which are in the right place? Well, it's relatively easy for the stitches that are, you can't really see them, but they're in, because they're in white, but the stitches that are way up here, you know, where I've sort of gone across quite a distance, I've done them relative to the grid lines. But the stitches that were down here, I'd done those relative to the initial 3 stitches on the bottom line, which doesn't match up with the grid lines. So I've taken out quite a lot of those as well. I think there might be some more to go. So, current state of play, I have stitched quite a lot of stitches on this and have very little to show for it. However, we've got one more little bit of unpicking to do. And at that point, I think, I mean, I will double check, but I think I'm pretty confident we will get back to The only stitches in here are correct with the grid lines that I have stitched. And then I will have to restart in the bottom left corner according to those grid lines and put those in the right place. That's the plan anyway. So I'm going out for tea in a minute, just next door. I will try and get this Flosstube done before then, but also then get the unpicking done so I can have a little breather, because I'm not very good at unpicking and then immediately restitching. It just feels quite soul destroying. So I'll do the unpicking, then I'll go and have tea, and that'll be lovely, and then I'll come back and hopefully stitch some more, and we may even end up the day with more stitches in than I started with. At one point that was not a dead cert. So it has been a bit of a learning curve. Not only did I start off thinking, oh, do you know, who needs grid lines? I can count. I also started off thinking, oh, you know, who needs to put this in a kind of pattern program? I downloaded Markup RXP a little while ago and I thought, oh, it's fine though. I stitch everything else just from the PDF. It'll be fine. Anyway, 10 minutes in, having worked out all the mistakes I've made, I'm like, do you know what? I think it would be better. Shall I see if I can put this in Markup RXP? So I did, and then I got to the bit which is like, you've used up all your free whatever, you're going to need to pay a subscription. And I was like, I can't pay $17.99 a month. Anyway, it's not $17.99 a month, $17.99 a year, which is still not nothing. But I'm like, I think for the sake of my sanity and progress, I think that's worth it. And it has been worth it. There was a few little things that I couldn't quite work out. And weirdly, it's all translated really well and it's all in there except for the last few pages of the chart. So I'm just going to see if I can show you this. Yeah, it says one or more pages are not correctly sized. Use adjust grid to correct them. I don't really understand that, and I've tried to do that. Let me see if I can just show you to remind. I might have mentioned this before. So this is the 24th of 24 pages, and you can see it's literally got 20 no, it hasn't even got 25 stitches. It's got 18 stitches on it, and it's just in one row, and all of the last 6 pages just have this one row of stitching. And for some reason Markup RXP has just been like, I don't know what to do with that. That's not a chart, that's nothing. I think it thinks it's a key actually, and obviously it's not. And I'm like, well, it's one row, so it's not that hard. I can work out whether it's or not. So although it's on this page and it says markup, I can't get it to mark any of that up because it doesn't think that they are stitches. So that's a little bit annoying, but it's not a disaster. And all the other pages are completely fine. So these are the ones, let me just show you so you can barely see any of that. This is the sort of next level of pages, and you know, this doesn't cover the whole thing and it's not full width, but it works perfectly fine, and I can highlight and mark up and it will find symbols and all of that sort of thing. So that is definitely helping. And I've always liked working from my iPad because I can blow the thing up as big as I need to, and the highlighting is definitely helping. And there is something encouraging. I've never thought, oh, I need to be one of those stitchers who tells you exactly how many stitches they've done, but I think for that project it will be encouraging to have a stitch count. Here's the thing, and I'm slightly embarrassed to admit that I did used to be a maths teacher a long time ago. Anyway, I've been doing some mental sums about the number of stitches in this project, and I slightly freaked myself out because I don't know why, but I'd somehow added in an extra factor of 10. And so in my head, I'm like, there's like 750,000 stitches on this. I'm not going to do that in 2 years. I might not do that ever. And then I put it into Markup RXP and it said 71,000 stitches. And I'm like, oh, I knew mine was only an estimate. I hadn't checked the actual numbers, but like, that's a whole factor of 10 less. That can't be right. That can't be right. So anyway, I went and found the actual stitch count and did the sums on a calculator instead of my head. And it turns out there are only 71,000, not 710,000. So suddenly that does feel a little bit more manageable. I need to do about between 650 and 700 stitches a week. Now that's not nothing, and certainly given today's progress, that seems a long way to go. But you know, it feels like I'm going to need to work, but it's not absolutely ridiculous. If I did 100 stitches a day, that would do it. So yeah, we are not giving up at this point. Now I have one more thing I want to just show you about what I've done to help with the Gecko Reach kit, and I'm really pleased with this. You'll see from the unboxing, the threads come on like long thread cards with holes punched in and the number and the symbol next to each thing and the colour. The colours are not in any significant order, so that comes in numerical order, but then, you know, all the colours are sort of mixed up on all the cards, and I'm like, that doesn't seem to me the most logical way to find it. I watched a video, and if I can find the link for it, I will include it below. Someone else starting off on a Gecko Reach kit. And what she had done was reorganise her threads by colour. So they're DMC threads, but you don't get given the DMC number. I mean, you could go and check, I suppose. I've got the DMC thread card, and maybe I could match them up. But unless I run out of something, I'm not going to bother. So what I did was I spent a very pleasurable day last weekend sorting them out into different colours and putting them on these cards, and then sticking, you get a sort of a chart with the colours and symbols separately from the colour card, the thread cards. And I also get, because I ordered the digital files, I've got a digital version of that as well. So if I ever needed to print this again, I could. And I mean, it just looks so pleasing, doesn't it? So I found these on Etsy. I can't remember the name of the shop, but I will put it below. They were about £2 each. Some were slightly less and some were slightly more. I don't know why, but they're all from the same shop. And yeah, it was just super fun. So you can see they've got these little holes at the top. If you wanted to put your cards on a ring, you could. I haven't bothered, and I don't think I'm going to. But when I started stitching again this morning, it was so much easier. I could look at the symbol. I looked at the picture. I don't think I've got it here. But anyway, the picture, you get the whole thing, and I'm like, okay, I think that's probably going to be a purple. So I'll pull up my purple card. I'll have a look. Have I got the symbol on here? If I haven't, that's fine. It doesn't take long, I find, to find the symbols on these. I really enjoyed putting the blues on the blue card. The shop only had 5 colours of these. So the blues are on the blue card. The pinks are on the pink card. The greens are on the green card. I call them cards, but they're made of plastic. They're much sturdier. And I'm pretty sure these will last through a whole project. Whereas those card ones, I mean, I would have them ripped within days, probably. There wasn't a purple card, so the purples are on the orange card. And then the yellows, the orange, the browns, and the greys, you know, there's not a lot of yellow in it, are on the yellow card. Really helpful, and they're really handy then to store. And the lady I was watching, she had done this, which I've only so far done with the greens, where she's just done a really loose braid or plait. And so you can still pull out an individual thread without any trouble, but it just means the flosses are much less likely to tangle up with each other, or even if the braids do tangle up, they'll be much easier to pull apart. So I think I am probably going to try and do that on the others, but I haven't got around to it yet. So I really recommend these. I think they're going to help enormously as I work through the project. They're very helpful this morning, and I feel like I've not wasted time searching for the right colours because I've been using these, and they're just easy to handle. You know, I'm not worrying about pulling one out or whatever, and I'm not worrying about them all getting tangled up with each other. They seem to work really well. So those have been a win. Everything else has been something of a failure so far with my Gecko Reach. I'm hoping, so I'm really focusing on it over this bank holiday weekend, and my goal would be, so it's Saturday afternoon now, I've got Sunday and I've got Monday. I've got actually a little bit of work on Monday, but it's fine. My goal will be by the end of that to really feel confident about stitching this and how I'm stitching this, and the best way for me to do that and to keep track, and hopefully not have to do quite so much unstitching in the future. Oh, I forgot to say, if you haven't watched the previous video, it is called Paxton's Tower and Cottage by Dorian Spencer from Gecko Reach. I will put a picture up so you can have a look what it's going to look like one day. The plan is using this fabric, which I think is going to work really well, is that when I get to the sort of sky section, I'm only going to do tent stitch rather than cross stitch, and just use the colour of the fabric as a sort of unifying thing. I think it'll work as a unifying thing actually across the whole piece. Like, hopefully you won't see it precisely, but I think, yeah, I think it will make a difference having it there rather than just white Ada. So that is all the stitching I've got to show you. A couple of things with respect to plans, although I haven't really got anything I can show you about this. Dr. Kristi, awesome Dr. Kristi medieval historian from Kristi's Corner Needlework, put the link below. She was talking about what she was going to do in May, and you know, various people make all sorts of plans for May. It's kind of one of those months, you know, September feels like one where people have particular kind of things they plan, or, you know, March for March Madness and that kind of thing. And May is certainly one. And there are lots of different ways people do that, doing a new start every day, doing a monogamous single project that you stitch throughout May, different kinds of projects. Anyway, she is doing Medieval May. Oh yes, medieval stitching throughout the month of May. Thank you very much. Yes, please. Now, as you know, I like a medieval stitch. I have some medieval patterns in my Etsy shop, and I was really delighted that Kristi has chosen one of my patterns as part of her Medieval May plan. So she's going to be stitching on Elephantine. I can't remember whether it's maybe the 3rd or 4th week of May. Not sure. But anyway, go and check out her video, because she has some awesome medieval patterns. She's just recently released, well, there's one that's on public release that's come out recently, and there's another Patreon pattern that she's done recently as well that's medieval. So she's working on a number of different medieval projects throughout May, and I'm like, I want to join in, I want to join in. Yeah, I do want to join in. I have some other things I have to stitch in May, including the work in progress I forgot to show you. I'll do that in a minute. So I do have to finish the work in progress because it is for a wedding that is happening in May. So I need to do that. I do want to get into a routine with working on the Gecko Rouge. And I also need to do some model stitching. But pleasingly, I mean, I have 2 models that I want to stitch that are medieval themed. I don't know if I will get to both of them. There's one that I really want to focus on. I've got it all kitted up. I've been itching to start it, to be honest, but I'm like, I mean, I might start it on Monday. If the Gecko Reach is going really well over the rest of the weekend, I might start on Monday. But I certainly am going to start it soon. Maybe I'll do it Monday because it is May the 1st and it's Medieval May. That is a medieval Christmas pattern. It's so fun. It's so fun. It is a little bit different from my other medieval patterns, but oh, it's so cool. So yeah, do stitch Medieval May, do stitch my medieval patterns in May if you want to. There's Elephantine and there is Cat Snails. And do go and check out Dr. Kristi for more medieval inspiration. Right, let me just go and I knew I'd been stitching on something. I was like, surely I must have done more than that. Give me a moment. So this is the thing I actually have been stitching on. I knew there was something. After I finished Tulips and Stars, I've been really focusing on this, although I had made quite a start on it before that. This is Rejoice Always. There we go. I can't find this on sale anymore. Yeah, I bought it in an Etsy shop along with another one, which is still there, but this one seems to have gone. I'm not sure why. Maybe she doesn't know how to set her Etsy shop properly and it thinks it's sold out, which, you know, can't really sell out of a PDF pattern. Anyway, I digress. So, rejoice always, pray continually, in everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. It is a quote from 1 Thessalonians. The chart has the verse charted out, the reference charted out, but I don't think I'm going to include that. They will know where that's from, and I don't really like the backstitch bit of that. I obviously am working this border. I've made some changes at the bottom here. There was a weird bit of leaf pattern that wasn't like any of the other leaf patterns on the circle. All the other bits, you can see how they sort of repeat. So I just thought, actually, I'm going to put in some more little flowers there. I am using almost all classic Colourworks, with the exception of one Gentle Arts thread. So the classic Colourworks are the blues, wavy navy, deep blue sea, and cool azul. The greens are Green with Envy from Gentle Arts, steamed broccoli. My dog likes broccoli. Is that weird? I think it's a bit weird. Steamed broccoli and chopped chives. And then there is also a pale yellow, which might be called something like sunshine or sunflower or something like that. It's a classic Colourworks anyway. I think it's coming out really well. It's not my favourite thing to stitch, I have to say, and I don't think the chart is brilliantly designed. It's one of those where it's just a mock-up and not stitched up, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know that an awful lot of creative thought has gone into this, to be honest. It's fine. It's gonna look nice at the end. I'm making a few changes as I go to make sure that it does. Now, the thing that I had been originally planning to do was to stitch 2 of these. Like I said, I bought another chart. It's very similar. It's from, oh, sorry, that all went a bit wobbly, didn't it? Yeah, I bought another chart. It's very similar. The colours were different slightly in that there were greens and reds rather than the blues. If I do both, I think I will do them so they match in the same kind of colours. Given how long this has been taking, I'm stitching it on 40 counts Vigart Silver Moon, Silver Grey, Silver something, 1/2. I mean, it's not taking super long, I guess. It felt like it was going really slowly when I was trying to work on other things as well. It has gone quite a lot quicker this week. But I'm not sure that I really want to do 2 of these. So I might just give them 1. Is that bad? Maybe. I think I might just give them 1. And then that, if I do that, then this should be finished within... I don't want to be stitching the night before the wedding. I really don't. So actually what I think I will do is finish this and then assess realistically. But I suspect I won't do the other one. I won't do it for them anyway. Or I might do it for them for Christmas or something like that. But I think I won't go straight on to the second one. So then I will have, in May, things I'm going to work on. The Gecko Rouge, the Medieval Mystery Project for Christmas, model stitching. Finishing this. And then who knows? Well, I think I might have a list here that tells me what other things I want to do. There are other model stitches. I also have got plans. You may remember if you were watching me back in Christmas, around sort of Christmas time, that I was doing a pay it forward scheme. And I've got 2 people I need to make something to pay it forward for. And I've got everything lined up for what that is going to be. So I might well do those. They're not going to take enormous amounts of stitching. And I think they would be quite a nice change from Rejoice Always. They're not going to be on 40 count. And yeah, so I might do those as a little sort of palette cleanser. I've got a lot of model stitching written down here. I want to do some other Christmas model stitching, so I've got patterns to release that I'm hoping to release in June, so that if anyone is doing Christmas in July, they're available. And again, I won't be panicking about them around Christmas. So there might be quite a lot of Christmas stitching in May. I also, the next in my seasonal Jack series will be due out 21st of June. So at some point I need to stitch that. I might wait till June to do that. They're not huge, they don't take hugely long, and the pattern is done. So I might do that. And I also need to pick a Stitch Your Stash project, because I don't think any of those that I've talked about so far are from my stash. It might be quite a small one. I don't know. The Get Your Kit On one was like a impulse decision to do that, and I'm really glad I did and got that out of my stash. So I don't know. I think I will just quite enjoy. I've got quite a few smalls that I might do. Yeah, that I'll be glad to have done, and they'll count for Stitch Your Stash, and they won't take too much time. So lots and lots of things that I want to try and get done in May. Now, I've lost the page with the list of things I was going to talk about in my Flosstube. Model stitching. Now, this is exciting. The only model stitch I've used for is Yasmins Made with Love, who very kindly agreed to stitch for me the small that you get as part of the Elephantine pattern. So I had stitched the main pattern. I designed a little small that went with it, and I just didn't have the energy at that point, the commitment, so I'm going to stitch more elephants. So I asked around if anyone would want to stitch it, and she very kindly did. And I didn't ask her to send it to me, so she stitched it. She has the piece, and she just sent me photographs so that I could include in the pattern to show what it would look like. All fine. I've had a particular pattern in my list of designs to stitch up for quite a long time that's not my typical style, but I really, really like it. And I just looked at my list of things that I really want to stitch and get out there soon, and I'm like, I just don't know when that's going to get near the top of the list. And I think there are people out there who might really like to stitch this, and I wonder if any of them would like to model stitch it for me. And maybe it's the kind of pattern that I'm sort of taking a risk on. Maybe it is the sort of pattern that people will want to stitch and more people might buy it. And therefore I'm willing to invest a certain amount of money to pay someone to stitch it for me. So I put out on Instagram last week, would anyone be interested in model stitching for me? And I think I put in the advert some really basic details, like how many total stitches there are and how many colours of floss there are and that sort of thing, so people could see what sort of project it was likely to be. I'm not asking anyone to model and stitch a full coverage, 100,000 stitches piece, and I'm not asking you either a sort of little tiny small on a 14 count aid that will take 5 minutes. And Helen, lovely Helen from the Diddy Stitcher, got in touch really quickly to say she would be interested in doing it. She's done some model stitching before, I think maybe not paid model stitching. She has beautiful stitching anyway. We talked about time frame and how long it might take, and I said, this is the sort of money that I am able to pay. Does that sound all right to you? And she was very happy to try that. And yeah, and she's been great. So I sent her the version of the pattern as I had it at the time, just so she could see the sort of thing that it was going to be. And she was like, oh, I love it, which was just really nice to hear. I sent her off the floss and the fabric a couple of days ago. She's already got them. I had an email from her this morning. She's super on it. And she's like, these are the things that I've already noticed that I think are wrong. It's a pattern that's got quite a lot of repeating in it, so you should be able to see what's meant to be in quite a lot of places. And she's like, I think these are already there. Let me know if I'm right, if you want me to stitch it as the chart you sent me, or make the correction. I'm like, no, correct it. So I think she's going to be great. And you should definitely go and watch. I mean, you should go and watch her Flosstube channel anyway, but her latest video, she talks a bit about, well, two things. She talks a bit about becoming a model stitcher, and she's so sweet. She's like, it's always been a dream of mine. And it's like a dream to be paid to stitch. And I'm like, I'm glad you like that. And she's really excited about it, but also nervous about it. I don't think she has anything to be nervous about. I think she's going to be great. But it was lovely for me to watch that and say, oh, this is someone, who is taking it really seriously. This isn't just someone thinking, oh, I could get a free pattern out of this. She's really responsible with it, and really, I think it's going to be a really good thing. And I'm excited to see both the model and also how much better the pattern is going to be with her eyes on it. The other thing she talks about in that video that I was super interested in, she has, I think, dyspraxia she was talking about, but I think probably the same issues would arise if you were someone with dyslexia and maybe even dyscalculia. I don't know how you say that, dyscalculia. Someone who with number blindness as well. When designers choose the symbols that they use for their charts, there are certain kinds of symbols that are much harder for some people to distinguish. So if you think the kind of classic thing that you might think of with a small child learning to read and write, they get a D and a B confused because they reflect. And they sort of, it's cute. They write it and they write B's instead of D's or D's instead of B's, that sort of thing. And if you're somebody who, she's talking about being the sort of person for whom actually that's still quite difficult. Looking at a symbol and then looking for it elsewhere and remembering whether it was a D or a B and what that looks like. Or like one of the examples she uses forward slash or a backward slash. You remember it's a slash, but actually you don't necessarily distinguish correctly between the two forward and backward slashes. And that obviously is frustrating. I would be frustrated you know, I'm doing enough unstitching on my full coverage, and I understand the symbols. I don't have that problem. But if I were having that problem, I would be super annoyed. That it was just making life so much more difficult for myself. So yeah, it's really worth going and having a listen, particularly if you are a designer, so that you can think about how am I using symbols in a way that makes this as easy for people to stitch as possible. I mean, that's what you want, isn't it? I imagine if you're producing like a heaven and earth design with 250 different floss colours, maybe it's a little bit harder, but most of us designers are using, like even my Gecko Reach only has 88 symbols. Well, actually, it's not that hard to find 88 pretty distinct symbols, I think. You know, maybe you get some and you're like, oh, I don't know if these are too close. But actually, just to really take that seriously and think, you know, will somebody looking at this not just be able to see, you know, you want it to be clear, but it's not really that issue. It's the, will they be able to process it, I think. And, you know, I tend to do that verbally, I guess. So I might well say, oh, this is a slash, and then have to go back and say, oh, but what kind of slash was it? Or this is a triangle. Oh, there seem to be 5 different kinds of triangle. So then I have to give them kind of verbal names. This is a white triangle on a black background, or, you know, this is a sideways triangle, or this one's the whatever symbol, to be able to distinguish that. And so, you know, that works and I can do it, but, you know, just make it easy for people. My design software is called Stitch Sketch. I paid £1.99 for it and I use it on the iPad, and I can change the symbols to pretty much anything I want. So I am sure that other design software that is more expensive and sophisticated, you can change the symbols to whatever you want as well. Think about it. Anyway, I think that was all I was going to talk about with respect to my stitching and plans. So in terms of designs that are going to come out, there's this one that Helen is model stitching for me. There will be the next seasonal jack, and there should be some Christmas patterns coming. I hope all of that in June. Yeah, so watch out for those. Now, Stitchers Collective, just to let you know, you can still buy the Earth Day collaboration 31 charts. What was that? 8 nonsense. 31 charts from hugely varied range of designers, all sorts of charts there that you might enjoy. Minimum donation is $10. There's a number of different charities that you can choose which one of which you prefer to support. You send them the receipt. You wait patiently because this is done manually by just 2 people, and they will send you the PDF of all the charts. So far, in the first 2 weeks, that's right, it's raised over $10,000, which is just brilliant. Just brilliant. There's another 2 weeks left. May the 15th, I think, is the last day. So do make sure you've got the thing by then. After that, charts revert back to their original designers, who may choose to put them up for sale for money, may make changes to them. You know, if you want the charts, just get the chart. $10 for 31 charts. Just do it. Just do it. Anyway, so that is, I think, all I have to say about cross stitch. But I do want to talk to you a little about coronation and coronation needlework. So let's start. I think we'll do it in reverse. No, we'll do it in forward historical order. So lots of what I'm going to say is be taken from this book. It's called An Unbroken Thread, celebrating 150 years of the Royal School of Needlework. So we are not going back all the way into the past. We are starting with the first English coronation, British coronation, of the 20th century. And that was the coronation of Edward VII in 1902. So Queen Victoria dies in 1901, and his coronation is the following year. The way it works, I will try to stop hitting the table with the heavy book so it wobbles. You accede to the throne, you succeed as the next monarch immediately the previous monarch dies. So you don't have a gap between kings or queens, but there is quite often a gap, and it can be quite a lengthy gap between the person becoming monarch and then having the coronation. So you become the monarch the moment the previous person dies. That then is formally proclaimed, and the sort of acknowledgement of the government and the parliament, don't know, whoever it is, the state anyway, happens relatively quickly. So for King Charles, I think it was 2 days after his mother died. And then the coronation happens at some point after that. And part of the reason the coronation doesn't happen immediately is because there's quite a lot of work that has to be done for coronation. And although we've known for a while, obviously, that the Queen couldn't live forever and she was 96, so, you know, it was going to be sooner rather than later. Sometimes coronations have to happen very suddenly. When the Queen became Queen, her father died very suddenly and unexpectedly, and he was not that old. I mean, we know she was, what was she, 22, 23 when she became Queen? Yeah, her father was not old, and it was unexpected. And so you never know, is my point really, when there's going to be a coronation and who it's going to be and how, what sort of size they're going to be even. So we start anyway in 1902 with Edward VII and the Royal School of Needlework, which had been formed in the 19th century. One of the things I love about this book is it talks about how much the Royal School of Needlework was set up specifically to provide ways for women to work and earn money and have a certain degree of freedom and independence in their lives. So here we go. The coronation was set for 26th of June 1902. The Royal School of Needlework had been entrusted with embroidering the king's mantle. It was going to be a plain cloth of gold woven specially, and then the workers of the Royal School of Needlework would stitch the heraldic designs according to the layout established by someone called Miss Witchelow. Miss Witchelow was entrusted the extremely difficult task of drawing a design adaptable to the shape of the mantle and introducing at proper intervals the necessary devices down the front from on either side the Rose of England. Down the front on either side, the Rose of England alternates with the Imperial Eagle and the Irish Shamrock, and in the next line you have the Crown, the Thistle of Scotland, and the Lotus. I don't know why we have the Lotus. I don't know why there isn't a Welsh symbol, and maybe there is, but I've never heard that the Welsh symbol is a lotus. Anyway, I'm going to show you. This is the sketch that she made of what the mantle would look like, and you see the very sort of regular grid of those symbols there. And then on the other side of the page, this is from a painting made in 1902, and I don't know if you can see, but this is the king, and he is wearing the gold mantle. The cloth is woven from gold specially, and then embroidered according to the design, specially made. It also says the RSM was engaged in embroidering uniforms for the Beefeaters, the Yeoman Guard, the King and Queen's Garter banners for St George's Chapel, commissions from the Empire, including a tablecloth of gold embroidery for the banquet hosted by the Viceroy at the coronation celebrations in India. There was also a new altar frontal that they designed, something called a super frontal, I don't know what that is, and various other things. The coronation was scheduled, I didn't know this, was scheduled for 26th of June, but Edward developed appendicitis just before, so it didn't happen until the 9th of August. Anyway, I imagine there's a certain sigh of relief amongst the embroiderers still finishing the night before. So we don't have loads of photos of this. Obviously, it's 1902, it's quite a long time. One of the things we have here is a pencil sketch by the House of Worth for the coronation dress of the Duchess of Portland, embroidered by the Royal School of Needlework, and then the actual dress. So that's quite fun. I don't know who the Duchess of Portland was. She might have been one of Queen Victoria's grandchildren, maybe. That's the sketch of the dress, and then this is what she wore. So they were embroidering all kinds of stuff for the guests as well as for the monarch. You know, they're embroidering furnishings, cushions, curtains sort of things, as well as what he's wearing. Let's skip ahead. So after 1902, well, they think there is going to be the coronation of Edward VII in whatever day that was, whatever year that was, 1936. I guess would be, I don't know when the coronation was planned, it might have been 1937. But anyway, he abdicates, and so then we go on to George VI, which is Queen Elizabeth II's father. Yes, bit complicated. Anyway, first order in the workbook was for the embroidery of 7 chairs. These were the chairs of recognition for the king and queen. Then the thrones, then chairs for other people. Then they are doing a canopy. I love this. For the Robe of Estate, the organisers considered the Robe of Estate used by Edward VII and George V was looking worn. So the RSN instead repaired the robe of George IV, which was in better condition and needed little work. So they don't make a new one for the king at that point. They look at all the ones they've got in the cupboard, decide which one's in best condition, and do work on that to make sure it looks appropriate. But what they did make were trains for his 2 children, Elizabeth and Margaret, and also his wife, Queen Elizabeth, who, if you're my age, you've always known as Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. So she was his wife. And so the picture here, that is George VI with his wife, Queen Elizabeth, and then the taller girl is who went on to become Queen Elizabeth II, and her sister, Princess Margaret. And you can see they are all wearing the same sort of robe with this long, long train. And this was the one that was just repaired. And then the other 3 were all stitched. And they are stitched, all of these things traditionally are stitched on velvet, silk velvet, in gold work. It is a very, very particular kind of embroidery. It is hard, and people have to be trained specially to do it. 35 women from the Royal School of Needlework worked on the coronation regalia. Work on the new canopy required separately worked eagles that could later be applied onto the cloth of gold. Extraordinary. Once the Queen had agreed the design for the robe, work could begin in earnest. In addition to what they made copies. I mean, you know, they had to make more than one to be used around the empire after the queens had checked them. Queen Elizabeth and her mother-in-law checked them, and then they could be sent around the Commonwealth, or as it was then mostly empire, so people could see what they had worn. The coronation in 1953, it was, so in my family, the way that worked was for my father, his house had just got electricity the year before, 1952, because they live quite rurally. And so they bought a television in 1953 to watch the coronation. My mother's family, they had electricity for longer because they lived in town. But my grandfather built a television to watch the coronation. He built a television. Like, you could just buy parts and build a television in the 1950s. I find that extraordinary. But anyway, nonetheless, obviously still a lot of people in the UK, but also around the world, obviously, could not watch the television version of the ceremony. And so seeing what people wore, they relied obviously on maybe radio reports, but also printed newspaper reports. But to be able to go to an exhibition and see what the robes looked like must have been amazing, I think. You can see this is how they work in the Royal School. You see several people all sitting around the same table working on the same piece of fabric. And that's why if you ever go to a class there, which I've been to a few one-day classes, they always teach you how to start and finish your work from the front. Because if you're doing this, you cannot be turning your work over every time you want to start and finish a thread, because then everybody has to stop. I mean, it just doesn't work. One of the other things I really love from the 1937 coronation are these. These are little butterflies made out of velvet that was left over from the robes that they've been using in the coronation itself. So it's not the actual robe doesn't get cut up, but the scraps of fabric get made into these little souvenirs that you can buy as a memorial. I just think that's so lovely. compared to, you know, a coronation teapot or whatever. So that's what we got from 1937. 1953 is the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. She becomes queen in 1952, and it's, what is it? It's not quite 18 months later, the coronation. And it takes a long time this time because it's the first queen we've had, well, since Victoria, but Victoria was quite short, shall we say. I mean, you know, the queen was not super tall, but Victoria was quite short. And anyway, they decide they need to make, she has to have a dress, which the male kings don't, because they can just wear military uniform. She has to have a coronation dress, which has to be embroidered, and they also have to do a robe that's appropriate for her. So, what does she have to do? There are fewer other items than previous coronations, because items can be reused. The altar dorsal, the canopy, and so on. But her robe is new. The Royal School of Needlework was asked to develop 3 designs that she chose from. The theme for the coronation was peace and prosperity during her reign. And on the selected design, this was depicted by an intertwining decoration called olives and wheat sheafs. Some of the... There we go. What have we got? The cloth has to be woven before you can start the embroidery. It was February. So this is extraordinary. Her accession is in February 1952. It is February 1953 before the velvet cloth that they are going to embroider for her robe arrives at the Royal School. So that's a year. And then they've got, what, 4 or 5 months? March, April, May, June, 4 months to actually do the stitching before the coronation. 12 women worked on the robe. They do quite a lot of it as what they call a slip, and that's where you work the embroidery separately and then apply it to the robe rather than working actually directly on the velvet. How long do you think it takes to embroider a coronation robe? 3,500 hours. It's quite a lot. It's quite a lot. I don't know whether that's 3,500. I think that's 3,500 hours with 12 women working on it. That's not 3,500 woman hours. It's 3,500 hours of 12 people working. So what happened? They put that on show, and this is what her robe looked like. It's long and it's all embroidered, and it is absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. I'm just having a look if it says how long it is. I don't think it does. But anyway, it was quite long. One of the other things I really like, this bit here, and I have seen this in person. This was not from the actual robe. This was a sampler that they made. So I don't think at this point they made a model of the whole thing, because I got confused. I was talking about television in the last one. That was 1937. No one had television in 1937. This is 1953, and some people do have television, but not a lot. But so I don't think they make whole copies in 1953. But what they did do was make a copy of this so that it could be sent round as part of an exhibition, because the actual robe was on display somewhere else, and they wanted this as part of an exhibition so people could see in Birmingham and Leeds, as the robe itself had been loaned elsewhere. The sampler shows the design and the 18 varieties of gold thread used in the work. This lists all the varieties of gold thread. Let me see if I can tell you what they are. Yeah. Smooth pearl, rough pearl, bright jack pearl, dull jack pearl, large gold bullion, medium gold bullion, smooth bullion, bright jack bullion, gold passing, gold twist, spangles, crinkled plate, embossed plate, different kind of embossed plate, large pearl pearl, pearl pearl, twisted gimp, and a different kind of twisted gimp. I mean, you gotta know what you're doing to create that. And that's part of the thing, is there just aren't that many people trained to do that sort of work. They also made little souvenirs. These are little pin cushions made out of the velvet. Yeah, edged with gold thread, filled with emery powder for cleaning needles. Okay, not pins, needles. Again, I would love to have had that sort of souvenir. So those are the 3 20th century coronations. What about the 21st century Coronation. Well, I have got something to show you here. It's not going to show you what he's actually going to be wearing next week. I'm sorry about that. But I used to subscribe to this magazine, and now I just get it digitally as part of my Readly subscription. So if you have Readly, you can also go and look at the embroidery magazine, and they've got a whole section in the latest issue on coronation keepsakes. And it's focused around not just the Royal School of Needlework, but also a company called Hand and Lock, who specialise in goldwork embroidery. So let me see what I can show you. We've got, again, the design of that mantle, but here you've got a lovely illustration of somebody working on that. And you see how everything has to be covered and kept clean while they're sewing on it. This is, what does this say? Picture 5. Yeah, illustration of working on the 1902 coronation. Coronation of George VI in 1937. Again, you've got somebody working on that robe. This was one that was being refurbished, I think. Honestly. Yeah, one of the refurbished robes. And again, it's got a picture of the little souvenirs. You've got a colour picture there of the ones. These are the ones from Queen Elizabeth, and these are the ones from George VI. We've got, again, the sampler bit. Oh, hey, this is, I think, a really beautiful picture of them. This is working on the robe. And you can see at the front of that picture here is the board that they used, again, covered in velvet, to keep all the gold threads carefully distinguishable, so that they're using the right ones in the right places. And again, you see that thing of multiple people working on the same piece of fabric. And then I'm just going to show you here, these are from the Hand and Lock Instagram feed. So if you don't follow Hand and Lock, go and follow them. Again, showing the kind of gold work. None of these are from a coronation, but the kind of gold work that will be used. So this is General's uniform, Diplomat's uniform, Queen's bodyguard, a cuff, doesn't say what garment that's from, and so on. But they certainly have worked on coronation stuff. I don't know why we haven't got any photos of what they have done for coronations. Anyway, that is why when the Queen died back in September, I said I thought the King's coronation wouldn't happen until the autumn of this year or even the spring of next year. I had forgotten that actually it's a lot easier to do the work for a king than for a queen. He obviously doesn't have to have an embroidered, hand-embroidered gown. He will wear military uniform. But the military uniform all has to be updated. And there was a picture of this in the news quite recently. I'll see if I can find a copy of it and put there. Because all the military uniform has to be changed to show the king's new symbol, regalia, crown, thing, whatever, emblem, I think is the word, not the Queen's. And while that may take a while to spread through the entire army, all those who will be on show next Saturday have to have the up-to-date version. And when I was at the craft show at the NEC last month, back in March, I was talking to someone there who is a Royal School of Needlework graduate. And she was saying, yeah, actually, that's the thing that most of them have been asked to work on, is military regalia and getting that all up to date, not just for the king, but for all kinds of people who will be part of that, for Prince William, obviously, but for pretty much everybody who will be wearing military uniform. And that's going to be a lot of people. They've had to be doing, updating all of their embroidery for that. I guess he said, I think I've seen that he is going to be using refurbished robes. I guess there's been a certain amount of work needed to be done to make sure that those are up to date. Camilla is going to be crowned, they all talk about she's going to be crowned queen. She will still be queen consort. I mean, that is just the name for somebody who is married to the king. You know, and usually they are known as queen. Queen Elizabeth, her mother was known as Queen Elizabeth. She was a queen consort. Queen Mary was a queen consort. Queen Alexandra was a queen consort. Queen Camilla is a queen consort. So it's not like a different thing. But anyway, she is going to have a little ceremony. So I guess there's stuff that will have to be made for her. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. The things people are wearing, the things people are sitting on, the things that will be hanging in the background. So if you are going to be watching the coronation at all, next weekend, just have a look out for the needlework involved, because it's no small part of what will be on display. Right, that's all I've got today. Thank you so much for watching. I, as you see, didn't manage, and I didn't think I would, a weekly habit of floss tubing. So I will anticipate that I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Happy stitching, and I hope to see you again.